I was the only one silent in the car, while everyone else was screaming their lungs out. Discordant voices singing along to the song blasting from the car's radio. "Come on, birthday boy, smile a little," my older sister Hazel nudged me. Grinning like an idiot, I scowled at her, and she burst into annoying laughter. They all knew why I wasn't smiling. They all knew I hated McDonald's, but they were making me celebrate my birthday there anyway. Well, it wasn't just my birthday. I guess that's how it goes with family. I shared a birthday with my cousin Luke, who was turning 9. At 15, I wanted to spend the day at the VR game park, or somewhere actually fun, anywhere but McDonald's. But as always, I had been outvoted. So I stayed quiet the whole drive while the rest of the family sang at the top of their lungs, like a bunch of parakeets. By the time we arrived, I was wishing for a hole to open up and swallow me whole. The place was packed, but luckily, there was a table big enough for all of us. Luke was especially happy because Ronald McDonald, the clown mascot, was in attendance. My scowl deepened. Why was the clown here? I hated clowns. They annoyed the hell out of me. It didn't take long for us to order, and within a few minutes, our food was ready. I was a few bites into my Big Mac when the clown approached our table. "Oh, I smell a birthday here," the clown giggled. Luke screamed and danced with joy. "I just love birthdays," the clown giggled again, before he started dancing. Everyone started cheering him on, even Hazel. "Go Ronald! Go Ronald!" They chanted as the clown gyrated and spun like a top, much to my family's delight. I didn't cheer along. I was too busy wondering why a grown man would willingly put on that stupid paint and costume just to act like a fool. I was also wondering what was wrong with my family for finding it funny. I raised my head to look for the waitress. I wanted another glass of orange juice. Instead, I made eyes with the clown. That moment felt like an eternity, though it couldn't have been more than a couple of seconds. His face turned quizzical when he realized I wasn't smiling or cheering like the rest. His red smile dropped, and his face twisted into a grotesque mask. He was angry, but I think I was the only one who noticed. A wave of fear rolled over me, leaving my mouth dry. My heart raced, and my instincts screamed at me. The garish white and red paint no longer looked stupid. It was terrifying. The clown finished his dance and took a bow as my family clapped. "That was great, right, Billy?" Luke squealed, tugging at my arm. "Billy, huh?" the clown inquired, looking at me. I gulped. "Why didn't you laugh, Billy?" the clown asked. His tone was friendly, but there were subtle undertones of menace. I stammered before being saved by the McDonald's staff. "Happy birthday to you," they sang, gathering around our table. The clown gave me one last wintry look before vanishing behind the mess of people who had joined in on the birthday cheer. I was uneasy for the rest of the celebration. I couldn't enjoy the food. I kept thinking about the clown and his angry eyes. After we finished eating, we piled back into the van and began to drive home. I was squished between Hazel and Luke, and I couldn't wait to play some serious COD at home. We had gone only a couple of miles when I noticed it. A van driving right next to us, matching our speed. It was white, with blue and red polka dots. Exactly the kind of van you would expect a clown to drive. As I watched, the windows started to roll down, and to my horror, it was the same Ronald McDonald clown from the restaurant. His eyes searched our van, and when they found me, he grinned like a maniac and screamed, "Why didn't you laugh, Billy?" The wind caught his words, but I heard them clearly. So did my dad. "What the f***? Isn't that the mascot from McDonald's?" my dad exclaimed, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Ronald is," Luke began, before breaking into a scream. A shock went through the van, and a sharp vibration ran through my body. The cloud had rammed into us with his van. He was laughing maniacally, gearing up to ram us again. My dad floored it, and our van tore through the freeway like a bullet. But the clown wasn't having it. He accelerated too, shouting after us the whole time. "You should have laughed, Billy!" he screamed again, ramming into us from behind. Our van wobbled for a few furious seconds, but my dad managed to get us under control. The mood in our van was grim. Everyone had gone quiet, and Luke had tears running down his face. The following moments were like a sequence from a horror movie. My dad weaving through traffic with sweat on his brow, and the crazed clown hard on our heels like a vengeful spirit. With each bump, he grew bolder. It wouldn't be long before he ran us off the road. I shuddered to think what he'd do if he managed to stop us. Suddenly, a new sound drowned out the laughing clown, the wail of police sirens. The relief that flooded me was like a dam bursting. I almost cried as I watched the clown slow down at the command of the squad car approaching from behind. I watched them arrest the clown in a daze. It was only later that we discovered the clown wasn't affiliated with McDonald's. He was just some random guy who had dressed like their mascot and entered the restaurant as another customer. Sometimes, I wondered if he would have chased us if I just smiled. Everyone says it was drugs. Cocaine, they say, can send you into violent delusions. But they didn't see what I saw that night. They didn't hear the guttural voice dripping with malice, didn't witness the frenzied look in her eyes, or feel the unnatural strength that surged through her hands. To them, she was just another crazy customer. For me, the trauma wakes me up at night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, replaying the horror over and over. It started innocently enough. A car glided smoothly into the drive-thru window, and I prepared to take the order. I'd been working at McDonald's for a year now, and the drive-thru was my preferred spot. Simple, routine, predictable. "Can I have an order of McNuggets, please?" The woman's voice was steady, almost pleasant. I glanced at her briefly. Mid-30s, blonde, with a touch of makeup. "Sorry, we're not serving those right now," I replied, flashing her a polite smile. I waited for her to choose something else. "I said I wanted McNuggets," she repeated, her voice hardening, eyes narrowing in a scowl. "Sorry, ma'am, we don't have them at the moment. We start to serve those around lunch." My smile faltered. "We have other great options," I began. She cut me off, her voice raising to a menacing shout. "Shut up! Shut the hell up! You better keep that mouth closed unless it's to give me my McNuggets!" Her scream rattled me, and I instinctively stepped back. I'd dealt with angry customers before, but this was different. The air around her seemed to crackle with something dark, a malevolent energy that chilled my blood. "Ma'am?" I tried again. That's when she growled, a low, animalistic sound, something no human throat should ever produce. "Give me McNuggets," she snarled, her hands shooting through the window, cold as death. Her fingers wrapped around my arm, icy and lifeless, like the touch of a corpse. "What the hell?" I yanked my arm back, heart hammering in my chest, but she wasn't letting go. "McNuggets!" she growled again, her grip tightening like a vice, dragging me closer as if I were nothing more than a rag doll. "What's going on over there?" Ernie, my manager, shouted from behind me, but I couldn't answer. The words were frozen in my throat, trapped by sheer terror. "Don't make me assume my final form," the woman hissed, fully out of the car now, her fingers digging deep into my arm, leaving crescents of pain in their wake. I pulled away in desperation, slamming the window shut with trembling hands. My pulse thudded in my ears. I could see her through the cracked glass, a distorted silhouette, growling incoherently. But amidst the garbled words, one thing remained clear. McNuggets. Then she was gone, Bang! Something hit the window like a sledgehammer, shattering the glass into a shower of shards. King McNuggets, came the guttural growl again. Another crash. This time, it was a water bottle hurled with frightening force, as though she was launching a missile. I peeked through the shattered glass, and my heart seized. Where the woman had stood, there loomed a hulking figure, a reptilian monstrosity, mottled green skin glistening in the morning sun. Its eyes were yellow, slitted, and its mouth stretched wide with jagged, sharp teeth. It hissed, its rancid breath seeping through the opening, filling the air with the stench of decayed meat. I screamed, staggering backwards. For a moment, the world tilted, and when I blinked, the woman was there again, just as she'd been before, smiling, calm. But the stench lingered. The sickening smell of that creature's breath hung heavy in the air. Had I imagined it? The logical part of my brain screamed that I had, but the trembling in my limbs told a different story. I stood, frozen, as she climbed back into her car, revving the engine and peeling off to the night. "What a crazy lady," Ernie muttered, clapping me on the shoulder, with a chuckle, but I couldn't answer. I just stared after the taillights fading into the distance, trying to process what I'd just witnessed, a horror that felt too real to be a hallucination. Back in school, I often asked the same question whenever we studied people like Adolf Hitler or other notorious figures. Why did anyone listen to him? I used to believe that only inherently evil people followed evil instructions. But now, as I sit alone in my dimly lit apartment, a cold, unnatural chill seeps into my bones as I recall the event that shattered that naive belief. April had only been with us for 4 months. She was quiet, diligent, and always kept to herself. There was just something sweet about her, a splash of innocence that made everyone treat her like their little sister. She was the last person anyone would want to hurt. It started with Edith, our assistant manager, stormed out of her office like someone possessed, her eyes wild and frantic. Her gaze darted around the room until it locked onto April, narrowing with something almost primal. I could swear for a second Edith's pupils elongated like a serpent's. "April, in my office, now," Edith commanded, her voice harsh and almost inhuman, as though something else were speaking through her. April stood frozen, pale as death, her wide eyes reflecting on an all too familiar fear. She knew something was terribly wrong. We all did, though none of us dared to speak. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping forward. But Edith didn't acknowledge me. Her eyes were locked on April. April hesitated, but slowly made her way towards Edith's office. Every step felt like a march to her doom. The air was colder now, almost unnaturally so, and a strange, low humming sound filled the room, though no one seemed to notice but me. Inside the office, things escalated quickly. Edith was on the phone, her voice low and guttural, as though the line connected to something far darker than just another human being. "Deputy Jenkins," she hissed. "You're sure she has it? The purse?" Her voice dripped with an eerie malevolence. April trembled. "I didn't steal anything," she whimpered, her voice cracking with terror. "Shut up!" Edith's voice boomed with an unnatural force, her eyes gleaming with something dark and sinister. "The deputy says you need to strip now." April looked at me, pleading silently, but I couldn't move. Something unseen. I wanted to scream, to shout, to help her, but all I could do was watch as April began to undress, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Edith's face twisted into a cruel smile, and for the briefest moment, her skin seemed to ripple, as though something horrendous was crawling underneath. "Jumping jacks," she spat, her voice drooping into an almost demonic growl. "Do them. The deputy says you're hiding stolen goods in your clothes. We'll shake them out of you." April's tears streamed down her face as she began the humiliating exercise, her body shuddering with every motion. The light in the room flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls that seemed to writhe and shift unnaturally. My mind screamed at me to do something, anything, but I remained frozen, paralyzed by the suffocating dread that filled the room. Unable to bear it any longer, I stumbled out of the office and into the hallway, collapsing against the wall. Something dark had taken hold of Edith. Something inhuman. I could feel it, creeping through the cracks of my mind like icy fingers. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours, before I finally gathered the courage to return. As I entered the office, the smell hit me first, a thick, rancid stench of decay and something metallic. But it only lasted for a second, and my nostrils cleared to take in the pine-scented air freshener we use in the office. Edith stood above April, her face twisted into a grotesque, otherworldly grin, her eyes glowing with a faint, sickly yellow. April was on the floor, curled into a ball, her sobs barely audible. "Reggie is handling it now," Edith hissed, her voice layered with an echo that didn't belong to her. "The deputy demanded punishment." That's when I noticed that Reggie, Edith's fiancé, was now in the office as well. Reggie was there, but he wasn't himself. His eyes had gone black, completely black, like a void itself had swallowed them whole. His lips moved in silent prayer, but it wasn't any prayer I'd ever heard. "Stop!" I screamed, my voice finally breaking free from whatever dark grip it had held me. But Reggie didn't hear me, or maybe he couldn't. His fingers twitched in the air as if something unseen was guiding him, and a twisted demonic smile spread across his face. From the shadows behind him, a figure emerged, a dark silhouette with eyes that burned like embers. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. It's a grin that stretched too wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth, dripping with something black and viscous. "Deputy Jenkins?" Edith whispered, her voice filled with awe as the demonic figure stepped into the light, its twisted form casting unnatural shadows on the walls. April let out a terrifying scream, and I finally found my strength. I charged at Reggie, knocking him to the ground. The demonic figure snarled, its voice like nails on glass, but it recoiled at the sound of police sirens approaching in the distance. As quickly as it had come, the darkness began to fade. Reggie's eyes cleared, and Edith's collapsed, her body trembling as if she had been used as a puppet. The demonic presence evaporated like smoke, leaving only a cold, eerie silence in its wake. The police arrived moments later, but by then, the true horror had passed. Reggie and Edith were taken away, both claiming they had been following orders. They repeated the name Deputy Jenkins over and over, but there was no record of any such person. As I sat in the aftermath, surrounded by the wreckage of that terrible day, I realized the truth. Something evil doesn't need a reason. It just needs a way. I don't know what happened to April. She quit right after. I heard she sued McDonald's and won, but I don't think any amount of money can ever make up for what she had gone through.